The phone rang at exactly 7:30 on a Tuesday morning, shattering the peaceful quiet of my bakery prep kitchen. I knew before answering that nothing good ever came from calls this early, especially when the caller ID showed my mother's name. 5 years of silence, and now she wanted something. Her voice cut through the phone like broken glass, demanding I host my brother Tyler's wedding at my successful bakery and event space. The woman who threw me out at 18 for refusing to give Tyler my college fund now expected me to provide a free venue worth $50,000 for their golden child's dream wedding. When I refused, her tone turned venomous. She threatened to show up anyway with 200 guests. I hung up knowing my parents never made empty threats and began planning my response. Standing in my kitchen surrounded by the warm scent of rising dough and vanilla extract, I felt the familiar knot form in my stomach that always appeared when dealing with my family. The morning sunlight streamed through the large windows of Sweet Dreams Bakery, the business I had built from nothing after they abandoned me. Every mixer, every display case, every carefully chosen tile represented years of 18-hour days and ramen noodle dinners. Growing up as the second child in the Henderson household meant living in Tyler's shadow from day one. While he received a brand new car for his 16th birthday, I got a lecture about responsibility when I asked for bus fare. When Tyler needed money for fraternity dues, our parents emptied my college savings without hesitation. When he crashed that same car 6 months later, they bought him another one while I worked 3 jobs just to afford textbooks. The pattern never changed. Tyler was the star athlete, the charming one, the future of the family name. I was the backup plan, the one who would take care of everyone when they got old. They made their priorities crystal clear the day I turned 18 and refused to hand over the remaining $8,000 in my education fund to pay for Tyler's spring break trip to Europe. If you cannot support your family when we need you, then you do not belong in this family. My father had declared, his face red with anger. Pack your things and get out. I remembered standing in the driveway with 2 suitcases and a broken heart, watching my mother close the curtains rather than look at me. Tyler had not even said goodbye. He was too busy planning his trip with my money. But that was 5 years ago. Now I owned the most successful bakery and event venue in our mid-sized Colorado town, complete with a stunning garden space, perfect for weddings. My client list included some of the wealthiest families in the state, and my reputation for creating magical events was unmatched. So when my phone buzzed with a notification, I was not prepared for what I found. Tyler had posted on social media, and his words made my blood run cold. Cannot believe my own sister refuses to help with my wedding. My parents told me she volunteered her venue as a surprise gift, but now she is backing out and ruining everything. Some people only care about money, even when it comes to family. Thanks for showing your true colors, Charlotte. The post already had dozens of comments from relatives and family friends, all expressing their disappointment in me. My Aunt Susan wrote about how selfish I had become. My cousin Mark called me heartless. Even neighbors who barely knew me chimed in about family loyalty and supporting your loved ones. My hand shook as I scrolled through the responses. Not a single person questioned Tyler's version of events. They all assumed I had promised something and then cruelly withdrawn the offer. My parents had orchestrated this perfectly, making me appear as the villain in a story they had completely fabricated. I called Maya, my best friend and business partner, who arrived within 20 minutes carrying coffee and pastries from our competitor down the street. "Or strategic thinking fuel," she announced, setting the bag on my desk. "Now tell me exactly what happened." As I explained the morning's phone call and showed her Tyler's post, Maya's expression grew darker. "Charlotte, this is not just about a wedding venue. This is a calculated attack on your reputation and your business. Look at these comments. Half your potential clients probably saw this." She was right. In a town our size, social media drama spread faster than wildfire. My success depended on my reputation for being trustworthy, professional, and kind. Tyler's post painted me as someone who would promise everything and then selfishly back out when family needed help. "They set me up," I whispered, finally understanding the depth of my parents' manipulation. They told Tyler I agreed, so that when I refused, I would be the one hurting him. They used his genuine disappointment as a weapon against me. Maya nodded grimly. "And now you have to decide how to respond. You can try to explain the truth, but who will believe you over the heartbroken groom?" I stared at Tyler's post, watching the comments multiply by the minute. Each one felt like a small cut death by 1,000 judgments from people who did not know the whole story. But as the initial shock faded, something else grew in its place. For 5 years, I had avoided confronting my parents about their treatment. I had focused on building my own life rather than demanding justice for the past. But this was not about the past anymore. This was about my present and my future, and I would not let them destroy what I had worked so hard to build. "Maya," I said, my voice steady for the first time all morning. "I think it is time my parents learned that I am not the same 18-year-old girl they threw away." By noon, I had made a decision that would have terrified my younger self, but felt perfectly natural to the woman I had become. I called Peterson Investigations, a small firm that specialized in financial fraud cases. If my parents thought they could manipulate me through lies and social pressure, they had seriously underestimated who I was now. Marcus Peterson arrived at my bakery during the lunch rush, blending in perfectly with the usual crowd of business people and shoppers. He was a retired police detective with graying hair and kind eyes that missed nothing. We sat in my office overlooking the main dining area while the normal sounds of a thriving business continued around us. "I need to know everything about my parents' current financial situation," I explained. "Something about this whole situation feels desperate, not just entitled." Marcus pulled out a notebook and began asking questions. How long had they been out of contact? What was my father's business? Did I know about any major expenses or life changes? As I answered, he nodded thoughtfully. "Oh, family financial fraud is more common than people realize," he said. "Often the perpetrators are facing their own financial crisis and see successful family members as their way out. Give me 48 hours and I will have a complete picture." While waiting for Marcus's report, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I started with a public record searching for my father's construction company, Henderson Home Builders. What I found made my stomach clench. The business that had once employed 30 people and built custom homes throughout our county was now facing multiple liens and lawsuits. Court documents showed unpaid contractor bills, incomplete projects, and angry homeowners seeking damages for substandard work. The company that had funded Tyler's college education and my parents' comfortable lifestyle was circling the drain. But the real revelation came when Marcus called me Thursday morning, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Charlotte, your parents are not just broke. They are drowning. Your father's business has been operating at a loss for 2 years, and they have maxed out every credit card they could get their hands on. But here is the kicker. They have been telling people that they own your bakery." I nearly dropped my phone. "What do you mean they have been telling people that?" I found loan applications, insurance forms, and even social media posts where they list Sweet Dreams Bakery as a family business asset. They have been using your success to secure credit and maintain their reputation. But here is the really twisted part. I found correspondence between your mother and Emma's family. Emma Bradford was Tyler's fiancée daughter of Judge Harold Bradford and his wife Patricia. The Bradfords were old money, the kind of family that had funded hospital wings and had their name on buildings around town. Your parents told the Bradfords that your venue was a wedding gift to the couple, part of their contribution to the celebration. They implied that they owned the business and could make that decision. Emma's parents were impressed by their generosity and have been bragging to their social circle about the beautiful venue their future in-laws secured for the wedding. The pieces clicked together like a horrifying puzzle. My parents needed to maintain their facade of success for Tyler's wedding, especially with the influential Bradford family involved. They could not admit they were bankrupt, so they invented a story that made them look generous while forcing me to provide the expensive venue for free. There is more, Marcus continued. Judge Bradford's reputation matters enormously to him. If this wedding turns into a scandal, or if he discovers your parents have been lying to him, it could destroy any remaining business relationships your father has. They are not just broke, Charlotte. They are desperate. I hung up the phone and sat in my office, watching customers enjoy lunch at tables Tyler would never appreciate and admiring decorations he had never helped create. My parents had always seen my success as something that belonged to them, but I had never realized how literally they meant that. My computer chimed with an email notification. It was from a vendor I had never heard of confirming delivery details for the Henderson wedding flowers as arranged by Charlotte Henderson. The invoice was for $1,500 due on delivery. With growing dread, I opened my business email more carefully. There were 3 more similar messages: catering confirmations, linen rental agreements, and a photography contract, all for Tyler's wedding, all with my name as the contact, and all indicating that payment would be handled on site. My parents had not just planned to force me to host their wedding. They had been arranging vendors in my name, creating financial obligations I knew nothing about. If these vendors showed up expecting payment and I refused to pay for services I never ordered, my business reputation would suffer. I called Marcus back immediately. They are trying to frame me for their wedding costs, I said, my voice shaking with anger. They have been signing my name to contracts. That is identity theft and fraud, Marcus replied grimly, and I bet there are more vendors you have not discovered yet. Charlotte, your parents are not just trying to get a free wedding venue. They are trying to stick you with the entire bill for their golden child's perfect day. As I hung up, I realized my parents had planned this attack carefully. They had created a situation where saying no would make me look selfish to my community, while saying yes would cost me thousands of dollars, and set a precedent that they could use my business whenever they wanted. But they had made one crucial mistake. They assumed I was still the frightened 18-year-old who would rather suffer in silence than fight back. They had no idea that the woman I had become was not just successful. She was smart, connected, and absolutely done being their victim. I picked up my phone and started making calls. If my parents wanted to play games with contracts and reputations, they were about to learn that I had become very good at both. Friday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to my bakery. I was decorating a 3-tier birthday cake when my employee Jessica knocked on my office door looking uncomfortable. Charlotte, your Aunt Linda is here. She says it is really important. Aunt Linda was my father's older sister, a woman who had always tried to stay neutral in family conflicts. She worked as a bank manager and had the kind of steady, reasonable personality that made her everyone's go-to mediator. Seeing her at my bakery meant my parents had called in reinforcements. She sat across from my desk, her hands folded tightly in her lap, looking older than her 58 years. The silence stretched between us before she finally spoke. Charlotte, I know you and your parents have had differences, but Tyler is family. This wedding means everything to him, and you have the power to make it special. I set down my decorating bag and looked at her carefully. Did they send you here to guilt me into providing a free venue? They are worried about you, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. You have become so focused on business success that you might be losing sight of what really matters. Family should come first. It was the same argument I had heard my entire childhood. Family comes first unless you were me. Then you came last after Tyler's wants, my parents' image, and everyone else's comfort. Linda, did they tell you they have been forging my name on vendor contracts? Did they mention that they have been lying to Emma's family about owning my business? Her face went pale, and I knew Marcus had been right about there being more to discover. What do you mean, forging your name? I showed her the vendor emails on my computer, watching her expression change from uncomfortable to horrified. Charlotte, I had no idea. Your mother just said you were being difficult about the wedding and that maybe I could help you see reason. What else did they tell you? Linda was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with something. Finally, she reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. They told me to give you this if you remained stubborn. They said it would help you understand why you owe the family your cooperation. I opened the envelope and found photocopies of legal documents I had never seen before. As I read them, the room seemed to tilt around me. Linda, what are these? Your grandmother's will, she said quietly. She left you money for college, Charlotte, $25,000 specifically designated for your education. I stared at the documents, my hands shaking. But I never got any inheritance money. Grandma died when I was 16, and my parents said she left everything to charity. Linda's voice dropped to a whisper. She left it to you. Your parents were the trustees until you turned 18. They were supposed to give you the money for college. The room went silent, except for the distant sounds of customers chatting in the dining area. I flipped through the documents, finding the bank statements that showed the money being transferred to my parents' account just 2 weeks after my 18th birthday. They stole my inheritance. The money went to pay for Tyler's business degree, Linda admitted. I only found out recently when I was helping your mother organize some paperwork. She asked me to destroy these documents, but I could not bring myself to do it. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. My grandmother had tried to ensure I could go to college even after she was gone. She had loved me enough to plan for my future, and my parents had stolen that love and given it to Tyler instead. Why are you showing me this now? I asked. Because what they are doing to you is wrong, Linda said, tears in her eyes. I stayed quiet when you were 18 because I thought maybe they would change their minds and give you the money later, but they never did. And now they are trying to use your success against you, and I cannot watch it anymore. She reached across the desk and touched my hand. Charlotte, I am sorry I did not speak up sooner. I was afraid of causing family drama, but my silence made me complicit in their treatment of you. I looked at the will again, seeing my grandmother's signature and the love behind her careful planning. She had wanted me to have opportunities to build a future. In a way, her stolen money had still helped me. It had forced me to develop the work ethic and independence that made my current success possible. Linda, would you be willing to testify about this if needed? Yes, she said without hesitation. I brought you copies, but I have the originals in a safe deposit box. I should have given them to you years ago. As she left, I sat alone with the documents spread across my desk. My parents had not just thrown me out for refusing to give Tyler my college fund. They had thrown me out for refusing to give him money that was already his taken from inheritance that belonged to me. Every struggle I had faced, every night I had worked until dawn to pay for classes every semester, I had considered dropping out because I could not afford books. All of it had been unnecessary. My grandmother had provided for me, and my parents had chosen to let me suffer rather than admit their theft. But as I sat there, something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling sorry for myself, I felt a cold, clear anger that sharpened my focus like nothing ever had. My parents had spent 5 years believing they had gotten away with their theft. They thought I was too weak or too ignorant to ever discover the truth. They had built their entire treatment of me on the assumption that I would never be strong enough to fight back. It was time to prove them wrong. Monday morning, I sat in the polished conference room of Walsh & Associates, the most respected law firm in our area. Sarah Walsh was a woman in her 40s with steel gray hair and a reputation for destroying opponents who underestimated her. She had handled the legal work when I bought my building, and I trusted her completely. $25,000, plus 5 years of interest and investment growth. Sarah said reviewing the inheritance documents. We are looking at a significant sum, Charlotte, but more importantly, we are looking at multiple felonies. She spread the paperwork across the mahogany table like a general planning a battle. Identity theft, inheritance fraud, forgery, and now this new evidence about the vendor contracts. Your parents have been busy. What can we do about it? Quite a lot, actually, but first I need to tell you about something else your father has been up to. Sarah opened another file, this one much thicker than I expected. Last month, your father applied for a business loan using your bakery as collateral. He claimed to be a co-owner with the right to secure debt against the property. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. He did what? The loan application listed him as a 50% owner of Sweet Dreams Bakery, with documentation showing his investment in the business startup. Of course, the documentation was forged, but it was sophisticated enough that the bank initially approved the application. How did you find out about this? Sarah smiled grimly, because I had already set up monitoring systems on your business properties after we bought the building. Anytime someone tries to file liens, secure loans, or make ownership claims against your assets, I get notified immediately. It is standard protection for business owners, especially those with complicated family situations. The loan was approved. Initially, yes. Your father was 48 hours away from receiving a $150,000 loan secured by your property. Fortunately, my monitoring system caught it and I was able to intervene. The bank is now conducting a fraud investigation. I stared at the documents, realizing how close I had come to losing everything. If Sarah had not been watching my back, my father could have taken out a massive loan against my business. When he inevitably defaulted, I would have lost the building I had worked so hard to buy. There is more, Sarah continued. The loan application was not his first attempt. Over the past 6 months, he has tried to use your business as collateral 3 different times with 3 different banks. Each application was rejected for various reasons, but the pattern shows deliberate, ongoing fraud. He has been treating my business like his personal ATM. Exactly, and given the timeline, this coincides perfectly with his business failures and mounting debts. Your success became his backup plan whether you agreed to help him or not. Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying me carefully. Charlotte, what your parents have done goes far beyond family drama. This is criminal behavior that could have destroyed your business and left you personally liable for debts you never agreed to take on. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I thought about the 18-year-old girl who had packed 2 suitcases and walked away rather than fight. I thought about 5 years of building something meaningful while my parents told people they owned what I had created. I thought about Tyler's wedding being planned with vendors expecting me to pay for services I never agreed to provide. I want to fight back, I said, not just to protect myself, but to make sure they cannot do this to anyone else. Good, Sarah said, making notes, because I have been researching your father's business, and you are not his only victim. There are contractors he has not paid, homeowners he has left with unfinished work, and suppliers who are out thousands of dollars. Your case could be the catalyst that brings justice for all of them. She handed me another set of documents. I am also recommending we bring in the FBI. Financial crimes that cross state lines fall under federal jurisdiction, and I suspect your father's activities qualify. The FBI. Charlotte, your parents have been committing identity theft, inheritance fraud, and loan fraud. They have been doing it systematically over multiple years. This is not a family dispute anymore. This is a criminal enterprise. As I left Sarah's office, I felt something I had not experienced in 5 years when thinking about my parents' confidence. For the first time, I was not reacting to their manipulation. I was not trying to avoid their drama or minimize their impact on my life. I was taking control. My phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus Peterson. Found something big. Can you meet this afternoon? I smiled as I typed back my response. Absolutely. Time to turn the tables. The scared 18-year-old they had thrown away was gone. In her place stood a successful business owner with resources, allies, and absolutely no intention of being anyone's victim ever again. My parents wanted to play games with my reputation and my livelihood perfect. It was time to show them what happened when you underestimated Charlotte Henderson. Tuesday afternoon, I found myself doing something I never thought I would do, reaching out directly to Emma Bradford, my brother's fiancée. I had only met her twice at family gatherings before my parents threw me out, but she had always seemed genuinely kind. Now, sitting in my office with Marcus Peterson's latest findings spread across my desk, I knew she deserved to hear the truth before her wedding day turned into a disaster. I found her number through social media and sent a carefully worded text. "Hi, Emma. This is Charlotte Henderson, Tyler's sister. I know this might seem strange, but I really need to speak with you about your wedding plans. There are some things you should know before Saturday. Could we meet for coffee?" She responded within an hour. "Of course, I have been hoping to talk with you. How about Riverside Cafe at 3? Riverside Cafe was neutral territory, a small coffee shop downtown where we could talk privately. I arrived early and chose a corner table where we would not be overheard. Emma walked in looking every bit the elegant bride-to-be, her blonde hair perfectly styled and her engagement ring catching the afternoon light. But as she sat down, I noticed the strain around her eyes and the way her smile seemed forced. "Charlotte, I am so glad you reached out," she said immediately. "I have been feeling terrible about this whole wedding situation. My parents are furious that you backed out of hosting, and Tyler has been so upset. But something about the whole thing has not felt right to me." "What do you mean?" Emma looked around nervously before leaning closer. "Your parents told us that you volunteered your venue as a surprise wedding gift. They said you were so excited to do this for Tyler and that it was your idea to keep it secret until the last minute. But when Tyler posted about you refusing to help, he seemed genuinely shocked, like he really believed you had promised something and then changed your mind." "Emma, I never volunteered my venue. I never even knew about your wedding until my mother called me last Tuesday morning, demanding that I host it." Her face went pale. "But they showed us pictures of your bakery and talked about how perfect it would be. They said you had already started planning the decorations." "They lied to you, and they lied to Tyler. They told him I had volunteered so that, when I refused, he would be genuinely hurt and angry, making me look like the villain." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then her expression shifted from confusion to horror. "Charlotte, if you never agreed to host the wedding, then where is it supposed to happen? We never booked another venue because they said yours was confirmed." "That is what I was afraid of. Emma, I think your parents have been deceived too. Have they given my parents any money for wedding expenses?" $20,000, she whispered. "They wrote a check to cover the venue deposit and some of the catering costs. Your mother said you preferred to handle the financial arrangements through family rather than dealing with contracts and deposits." I felt sick. "Emma, my parents kept that money. They have been telling vendors that I will pay the bills while taking deposits from your family for services I never agreed to provide." She stared at me in shock. "They have been scamming both families." "It gets worse. I hired a private investigator and we discovered that my parents have been lying about their financial situation. They are bankrupt, Emma. Their business is failing and they are drowning in debt. They need this wedding to go perfectly because your father's reputation is the only thing keeping my father's remaining business relationships intact." Emma put her head in her hands. "My father will be absolutely mortified. He has been telling everyone about how generous your family is, how impressive it is that you built such a successful business and are sharing it for Tyler's wedding. He used your parents as an example of good family values during his speech at the judicial fundraiser last week." "Your father is Judge Bradford, right?" "Well, yes, and his reputation means everything to him. If he finds out he has been publicly praising people who were lying to him and stealing from our family. She trailed off, realizing the implications. Emma, I know this is a lot to process, but I need you to know that I am not trying to ruin your wedding. I am trying to stop my parents from ruining your family's reputation along with their own. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. What can we do? The wedding is in 4 days. We have 200 guests expecting a celebration, and apparently we have no actual venue. Actually, I have an idea about that. But first, I need to know if you would be willing to help me expose what my parents have been doing. Not just for my sake, but for all the people they have scammed. Emma straightened up, and I saw steel enter her expression. Charlotte, my father did not become a judge by tolerating fraud and manipulation. If your parents think they can use our family to cover up their criminal behavior, they have seriously miscalculated. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through messages. I am going to forward you every email and text your parents sent us about the wedding arrangements, and I am going to call my father tonight and tell him everything. Are you sure this could get very ugly very quickly? Good, Emma said firmly. My father always says that sunshine is the best disinfectant for corruption. It is time to shine some light on your parents' lies. As we talked through the details, I realized that Emma was not just Tyler's fiancée. She was going to be a powerful ally. She had grown up in a family that valued justice and integrity, and she was not about to let my parents make fools of the people she loved. There is one more thing, I said as we prepared to leave. Tyler does not know about any of this. As far as he knows, I really did promise to host your wedding and then backed out. He is going to be devastated when he learns the truth. Emma nodded sadly. He adores your parents. He has always seen them as perfect, and learning that they manipulated him too is going to break his heart. But he deserves to know the truth. As I drove back to my bakery, I felt something I had not experienced in years. Hope. For the first time since my parents threw me out, I was not fighting this battle alone. Emma and her family had resources, connections, and most importantly, they had been directly victimized by my parents' lies. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Walsh. Judge Bradford called me. He wants to meet first thing tomorrow morning. Bring everything. I smiled as I parked behind my bakery. My parents had always been good at manipulation, but they had made one critical error. They had chosen to deceive a federal judge who had built his career on exposing exactly this kind of fraud. The trap they had set for me was about to spring shut on them instead. Wednesday morning brought Judge Harold Bradford to Sarah Walsh's office, and his presence changed everything. At 62, he was an imposing man with silver hair and the kind of quiet authority that filled a room. But what struck me most was his obvious anger at being deceived. Miss Henderson, he said as we shook hands, my daughter has told me about your parents' deception. I want you to know that the Bradford family does not tolerate fraud, and we certainly do not tolerate being used as unwitting accomplices in criminal behavior. Sarah had prepared a comprehensive presentation of our evidence, and Judge Bradford reviewed each document with the methodical precision of someone accustomed to evaluating complex cases. When she finished, he sat back in his chair and shook his head. This is worse than simple wedding fraud, he said. Your parents have been running a sophisticated con game using family relationships and social pressure to avoid scrutiny. They identified successful targets, researched their vulnerabilities, and executed a plan designed to transfer wealth while maintaining plausible deniability. What do you mean? I asked. They chose my family specifically because of my position. They knew that publicly embarrassing a federal judge would have serious consequences for them, so they created a situation where we would be invested in maintaining the fiction of their success. They made us complicit in their lies. Judge Bradford pulled out his own folder of documents. After Emma told us what was happening, Patricia and I spent the night gathering our own evidence. Your parents have been more active than you realize. He showed us bank statements and canceled checks, 20,000 for venue and catering deposits, 15,000 for flowers and decorations, 8,000 for photography, and 12,000 for music and entertainment. We have given them $55,000 over the past 3 months. I felt dizzy. $55,000. They convinced us that all vendors preferred to work through family intermediaries rather than dealing with multiple clients. They said you had established relationships with all these businesses and could get better prices. We thought we were being smart by letting them coordinate everything. Sarah was taking notes furiously. Judge Bradford, do you have documentation of what services this money was supposed to cover? Every penny. Patricia keeps meticulous records. He handed her a thick folder. Contracts, payment schedules, vendor contact information. Everything your parents told us had been arranged. Have you contacted any of these vendors directly? We called 6 of them yesterday. 4 had never heard of the Bradford-Henderson wedding. The other 2 had been contacted by your parents, but told that Charlotte Henderson would handle all payments on site. The room was quiet as we absorbed this information. My parents had not just stolen from Emma's family. They had created an elaborate fiction about vendor relationships and services that did not exist. There is more, Judge Bradford continued. I made some calls to colleagues in the business community. Your parents have been using your success and our family's reputation to secure credit and business relationships for months. They have been telling people that Judge Bradford's daughter is marrying into their family and that Charlotte Henderson's bakery is a family business they partially own. Marcus Peterson, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. Judge Bradford, I think your daughter's wedding was just the tip of the iceberg. I believe your parents have been planning to use this connection to launch a much larger fraud scheme. He pulled out his own folder of evidence. I found loan applications where your father lists Judge Bradford as a business reference. Grant applications for his construction company that mention family connections to federal judicial families. Even a proposal for a city contract where he claimed special insight into legal requirements because of family relationships. He has been using our engagement to Emma as his entry point into social and business circles he could never access otherwise. I said, finally understanding the full scope of their plan. Judge Bradford's expression grew even grimmer. Miss Henderson, your parents were not just trying to get a free wedding venue. They were positioning themselves to use my family's reputation and your business success as the foundation for much larger financial crimes. Sarah looked up from her notes. This changes everything. We are not just dealing with family fraud anymore. This is organized criminal activity with federal implications. What does that mean? I asked. It means the FBI needs to be involved immediately, Judge Bradford said, and it means your parents' little wedding scam is about to become the least of their problems. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text message from my father. Charlotte, we need to talk before Saturday. There are things you do not understand about this situation. Meet us tonight at 7 at Riverside Cafe. I showed the message to the room. Judge Bradford smiled for the first time that morning. Perfect timing, he said. Sarah, I think we need to arrange for some additional attendees at that meeting. Marcus grinned. I know just the people. For 5 years, I had avoided confronting my parents because I thought it would only bring more pain and drama into my life. But sitting in that conference room, surrounded by people who believed in justice and truth, I realized that some confrontations were not just necessary. They were inevitable. My parents had built their entire scheme on the assumption that their victims would be too embarrassed or too intimidated to fight back. They were about to learn that they had seriously miscalculated the courage of the people they had chosen to deceive. That evening, I arrived at Riverside Cafe 15 minutes early, my heart pounding, despite the careful planning that had gone into this meeting. Sarah Walsh sat at a corner table with her laptop, looking like any other customer working late. Marcus Peterson was parked outside in an unmarked van with recording equipment that Judge Bradford had helped arrange. Most importantly, Two FBI agents were positioned discreetly nearby, ready to intervene if needed. My parents walked in at exactly 7 o'clock, and I was struck by how much older they looked than I remembered. My father's hair had gone completely gray, and my mother's face showed lines of stress I had not noticed before. They were dressed nicely, but not expensively, and I realized they were probably wearing their last good clothes. But Tyler walked in behind them, and that was the surprise I had not expected. He looked uncomfortable and confused, glancing around the cafe like he was not sure why he was there. At 26, Tyler still had the easy charm that had carried him through life, but there was something different in his expression. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "Charlotte," my mother said as they approached my table, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us." I did not realize Tyler would be here. "We thought it was important for him to hear this conversation," my father said. "There are things about this situation that you need to understand." Tyler sat down across from me, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. 5 years was a long time, especially when you were siblings who had once been close. "Charlotte, I do not understand why you are making this so difficult," he said quietly. "When Mom and Dad told me you had volunteered your venue as a wedding gift, I was so happy. I thought maybe we could finally be a family again." I felt a pang of sympathy for him. "Tyler, when exactly did they tell you I had volunteered my venue?" 3 months ago when Emma and I got engaged. They said you had called them and offered and that you wanted it to be a surprise. And you believed that after 5 years of no contact, you believed I would suddenly call them and offer a $50,000 gift? Tyler's face showed the first flicker of doubt. I wanted to believe it. "I have missed you, Charlotte. I hoped maybe you had missed us too." My mother jumped in before Tyler could ask more questions. "Charlotte, we are willing to compromise. We know $50,000 is a lot to ask for, so we have found some additional funding." She pulled out a check and slid it across the table. It was made out to Sweet Dreams Bakery for $5,000. "Oh, this should cover most of your costs," my father added. "And of course, the publicity from hosting such an elegant wedding will be worth much more than money to your business." I stared at the check, amazed by their audacity. They were offering to pay me $5,000 for a venue worth $50,000, using money I now knew had come from Emma's family. "Dad, where did this money come from?" "That is not your concern," he said sharply. "The important thing is that we are trying to work with you." Tyler looked between us, sensing tension he did not understand. "What is going on here? Why is everyone acting like this is some kind of negotiation? Charlotte, you already agreed to host the wedding." "Tyler," I said gently, "I never agreed to host your wedding. I did not even know you were engaged until Mom called me on Tuesday morning." "That is not true," my mother said quickly. "Charlotte, I know you are upset about the past, but lying will not help anyone." Tyler's expression changed. "Lying about what, Charlotte? What is she talking about?" I looked at my brother, seeing genuine confusion in his eyes, and realized that he really had been used as much as anyone else. "Tyler, 3 months ago, did you personally hear me volunteer to host your wedding? Or did Mom and Dad just tell you that I had—" He was quiet for a long moment. "They told me. But why would they lie about that?" "Because they needed you to believe it, so that when I refused, you would be genuinely hurt and angry. They used your feelings as a weapon against me." Tyler looked at our parents with growing alarm. "Is that true?" "Of course not," my father said. "Charlotte is trying to rewrite history to make herself look better." "Then let me ask you this," I said, pulling out my phone. "If I really volunteered my venue 3 months ago, why did you call me on Tuesday morning demanding that I host the wedding? Why would you need to demand something I had already volunteered to do?" My parents exchanged glances, and I saw panic flash across my mother's face. Tyler was staring at them now. "You called her on Tuesday, but you told me she had been planning this for months." Tyler, there are complications you do not understand," my mother said. "What kind of complications?" I pulled out copies of the vendor contracts and slid them across the table. Tyler, look at these. Your parents have been signing my name to vendor agreements for your wedding. They have been creating financial obligations for my business without my knowledge or consent. Tyler picked up the papers, his face growing paler as he read. This is your signature on all these contracts. No, I have never seen these contracts before yesterday. Tyler looked at our parents with an expression I had never seen before: betrayal. You have been forging Charlotte's signature. We were trying to help, my father said defensively. We knew you wanted a perfect wedding and we were doing everything we could to make that happen. By committing fraud. Tyler's voice was rising, drawing attention from other customers. My mother tried to take his hand, but he pulled away. Tyler, you do not understand the pressure we have been under. Then explain it to me. Explain why you have been lying to me about my own wedding. The silence stretched between them, and I watched my parents realize they could not explain their actions without admitting to crimes. Tyler turned to me, his voice breaking. Charlotte, how much of what they told me was lies? Almost everything, I said quietly. He put his head in his hands. The venue, the vendors, even the story about you wanting to reconnect with the family. Tyler, I would love to reconnect with you, but not like this. Not based on lies and manipulation. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. I am so sorry, Charlotte. I thought you had finally forgiven us and wanted to be part of the family again. When you refused, I felt like you were rejecting me all over again. I never rejected you, Tyler. I was thrown out for refusing to give you money that was not even mine to give. Tyler looked at our parents with growing horror. What does she mean, money that was not hers to give? And that was when I knew the moment had come to tell him about our grandmother's inheritance. Tyler, what do you know about Grandma's will? She left everything to charity. Mom and Dad told me that years ago. I pulled out the inheritance documents Linda had given me and handed them to Tyler. As he read them, I watched my brother's face go through the same transformation mine had. Confusion, realization, and finally devastating understanding. She left Charlotte $25,000 for college, he whispered. Money that your parents took and used to pay for your education instead. Tyler looked at our parents like he was seeing them for the first time. You stole her inheritance. We made a family decision, my father said. Tyler had better prospects and the money was more useful invested in his future. That was not your decision to make, Tyler said, his voice shaking with anger. That was stealing. He turned to me, tears streaming down his face. Charlotte, I am so sorry. I had no idea. All these years I thought you were just being stubborn about helping the family. I never knew they had stolen from you. Tyler, I do not blame you. You were as much a victim of their lies as anyone else. Tyler stood up abruptly. I cannot do this anymore. I cannot marry Emma knowing that our entire wedding is built on fraud and lies. I cannot start my marriage by participating in a scheme to destroy my sister's business. Tyler, sit down, my mother hissed. You are making a scene. Good, he said loudly enough for the whole cafe to hear. Maybe it is time people knew the truth about what you have been doing. He looked at me one more time. Charlotte, I do not know how to fix this, but I want to try. Will you help me figure out how to make this right? Before I could answer, Sarah Walsh appeared at our table with her laptop and a very official-looking folder. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, she said calmly, I am Sarah Walsh, Ms. Henderson's attorney. You are going to want to see this. The trap was about to close. Sarah Walsh's arrival transformed the atmosphere at our table from family drama to something much more serious. She set her laptop on the table and opened the official folder she had been carrying. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, I represent your daughter Charlotte in matters related to financial fraud, identity theft, and inheritance theft. I also represent several other individuals who have been victimized by your criminal activities. My mother's face went white. Criminal activities? What are you talking about? Let me be very specific, Sarah said, pulling out a thick stack of documents. Over the past 6 months, you have committed identity theft by forging Charlotte's signature on business contracts. You have committed loan fraud by attempting to use her business as collateral without her knowledge. You have committed inheritance fraud by stealing $25,000 that legally belonged to Charlotte. And most recently, you have committed wire fraud by accepting $55,000 from the Bradford family for services you never intended to provide. Tyler, who was still standing, sank back into his chair. $55,000. Sarah turned to him. Mr. Henderson, your parents have accepted multiple payments from your fiancé's family for wedding expenses, claiming they were coordinating with Charlotte to provide services. None of those services exist. The vendors either have no record of your wedding or expect Charlotte to pay bills she never agreed to cover. My father tried to bluster. This is all a misunderstanding. We were trying to coordinate a family event. By forging federal documents, Sarah asked, because attempting to use Charlotte's business as loan collateral involved falsifying documents that cross state lines. That makes it a federal crime. She opened her laptop and turned it so we could all see the screen. It showed bank records, loan applications, and email correspondence. We have documentation of 3 separate attempts to secure loans against Charlotte's business. We have copies of forged contracts with vendors. We have evidence of the stolen inheritance, including bank records, showing the transfer of funds. And we have recordings of phone calls where you admit to planning to force Charlotte's cooperation through social pressure. My mother found her voice. Recordings. Mr. Peterson, Sarah said, looking toward Marcus's table. Would you join us, please? Marcus approached our table with his own folder. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, I am a licensed private investigator. Charlotte hired me to research your financial situation, and what I found was extensive evidence of criminal fraud. He sat down and opened his folder. Your construction business has been operating as a shell company for over a year. You have been taking deposits for work you cannot complete using new client payments to partially refund previous clients and keeping detailed records that show you always intended to use Charlotte's success to cover your debts. Tyler looked sick. You have been running a Ponzi scheme. We have been trying to save the family business, my father said defensively. By destroying Charlotte's business in the process, Marcus continued, I found correspondence where you discuss using her venue for multiple events to generate cash selling her services to your social contacts and eventually forcing her to hire you as a manager so you could control her finances. That is not true, my mother protested. Sarah opened another file. Actually, Mrs. Henderson, we have your emails. You wrote to your sister discussing plans to move in with Charlotte after the wedding, claiming you needed to help manage her business success. You specifically mentioned that she owed the family for her education and that it was time for her to support you in your retirement. The emails were projected on Sarah's laptop screen, and I could see my mother's exact words. Charlotte has gotten too big for her britches, but after Tyler's wedding, she will understand that family comes first. We will move in to help her manage the bakery, and she can finally start contributing to this family the way she should have been doing all along. Tyler read the email and looked at our parents with disgust. You were planning to take over her business. We were planning to be a family again, my father said weakly. By forcing her into financial servitude, Sarah said, which brings us to the current situation. She pulled out another document. This is a restraining order effective immediately preventing either of you from contacting Charlotte, entering her business premises, or making any financial claims against her property. My parents stared at the legal papers in shock. This is also a criminal complaint that will be filed with the FBI tomorrow morning, Sarah continued. Federal agents are investigating your activities for wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft, and racketeering. Racketeering, Tyler whispered. When criminal fraud becomes an ongoing pattern involving multiple victims and multiple types of crimes, it falls under RICO statutes, Sarah explained. Your parents have been operating a criminal enterprise for over 2 years. Marcus leaned forward. We have identified 12 other victims of your parents' fraud schemes, contractors who were never paid, homeowners who lost deposits on work that was never completed, and suppliers who extended credit based on false financial information. Those are business disputes, my father said desperately. They become criminal fraud when there is evidence of intentional deception, Sarah replied, and we have extensive evidence of intentional deception. She turned to Tyler. Mr. Henderson, as difficult as this is, I need to ask if you have received any gifts or financial support from your parents that might have come from fraudulent activities. Tyler looked stricken. My college tuition, my car, the down payment on my condo. All paid for with stolen inheritance money and fraudulent business practices, Marcus confirmed. Tyler put his head in his hands. Emma is going to be devastated. Her family trusted my parents completely. Actually, Sarah said, Judge Bradford is already aware of the situation. He and Mrs. Bradford are meeting with federal prosecutors tomorrow to discuss their role as victims in this case. My mother finally broke down. We never meant for it to go this far. We just wanted Tyler to have a nice wedding. You wanted Tyler to have a nice wedding paid for by other people's stolen money, I said quietly, just like you wanted him to have a college education paid for with my stolen inheritance. Tyler looked at me with tears in his eyes. Charlotte, I swear I did not know about any of this. If I had known the money came from you. I believe you, Tyler, but the question now is what happens next. Sarah closed her laptop. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, you have 48 hours to turn yourselves into federal authorities. If you attempt to flee or contact any of your victims, additional charges will be filed. As my parents sat in stunned silence, Tyler reached across the table and took my hand. Charlotte, I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any way we can still have some kind of wedding? Not the elaborate fraud they planned, but something honest and real. I looked at my brother, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. He was not the golden child I had resented. He was just another victim of our parents' manipulation, trying to build a real life from the ruins of their lies. Tyler, I said, let me make you a promise. If you and Emma want to get married, we will find a way to make that happen. But this time, we will do it with honesty, transparency, and respect for everyone involved. Tyler squeezed my hand. Thank you, Charlotte, and I promise I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what they did to you. As we left the cafe, I realized that losing my parents might be the best thing that ever happened to my relationship with my brother. For the first time, we could build something real together, based on truth instead of lies. Thursday morning brought something I had not expected, a reporter calling my bakery. News of a federal fraud investigation involving a prominent local family and a federal judge had apparently reached the media faster than anyone anticipated. Miss Henderson, this is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. We understand you are the victim of an elaborate family fraud scheme. Would you be willing to speak on camera about your experience? I was decorating a wedding cake for a Saturday ceremony. Not Tyler's, but a genuine celebration for clients who had booked my services honestly. The irony was not lost on me. I'm not sure I am ready for that, I said carefully. Miss Henderson, we have spoken with several other victims of Henderson Home Builders' fraudulent activities. Your story could help other families recognize similar scams and protect themselves. That gave me pause. If my parents had been running cons on multiple families, then speaking out might prevent them from victimizing others. Let me think about it and get back to you. I called Sarah Walsh immediately. Charlotte. I was just about to call you, she said. Judge Bradford held a press conference this morning announcing the federal investigation. He specifically mentioned your case as an example of how family relationships can be weaponized for financial fraud. He went public. He felt it was important to warn the community about ongoing scams, And frankly, the best defense against your parents trying to manipulate public opinion is to get the truth out first. What did he say exactly? He explained that his family was targeted because of his position that the perpetrators used family connections to establish credibility, and that multiple families in our community have been victimized by these tactics. He praised your courage in coming forward and encouraged other victims to contact law enforcement. Within an hour, my phone was ringing constantly. Other victims wanted to share their stories. Customers wanted to express support. And yes, reporters wanted interviews. Maya arrived at the bakery during the lunch rush with an armful of flowers and a huge smile. "Charlotte, look at this," she said, gesturing toward the dining area. The bakery was packed beyond capacity. Every table was full, there was a line out the door, and customers were buying everything we had in the display cases. What is happening? People are choosing your business specifically to show support, Maya explained. I have heard at least a dozen customers tell their friends they want to support you after what your family did. The local moms groups are planning to make Sweet Dreams their regular meeting place. The Chamber of Commerce called to ask if you need help handling the increased business. I looked around at the crowded dining area, watching strangers smile at me and nod approvingly. For 5 years, I had worried that my family drama would hurt my business reputation. Instead, standing up to abuse had brought my community together in support. My phone buzzed with a text from Judge Bradford. "Charlotte, I hope you will consider doing the Channel 7 interview. Your story is powerful, and it could help other families." Jessica, my assistant manager, came into the kitchen with a stack of orders. "Charlotte, we are completely booked for the next 3 weeks. People are specifically requesting you for their events because they want to support a business owner who stands up for what's right." That afternoon, I made the decision to speak publicly about my experience. Jennifer Walsh arrived with a small film crew, and we set up the interview in my garden area where Tyler's wedding was supposed to have been held. "Miss Henderson, can you tell us about your parents' attempt to force you to host your brother's wedding?" As I told my story on camera, I felt something shift inside me. For years, I had carried shame about being rejected by my family. But speaking the truth publicly, I realized that their rejection was not a reflection of my worth. It was evidence of their character. The hardest part was not the financial fraud, I said to the camera. It was realizing that people I loved were willing to destroy my life to cover up their mistakes. But I also learned that standing up to abuse, even when it comes from family, can inspire others to find their own courage. The interview aired that evening during prime time. By Friday morning, my story had been picked up by regional news stations, and by afternoon, it was trending on social media. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. Hundreds of people shared their own stories of family financial abuse. Support groups formed online for people dealing with similar situations. Most importantly, 3 other families in our area came forward with evidence of fraud schemes similar to what my parents had attempted. My bakery's social media followers increased by thousands overnight. Orders poured in from across the region. Food bloggers requested visits. Wedding planners added Sweet Dreams to their preferred vendor lists. But the most meaningful response came in a text message from Tyler. "Charlotte, I watched your interview. I am so proud of your courage, and I am sorry it took me so long to see the truth. Emma and I want to be part of your new life, if you will let us." Maya found me that evening after we closed, sitting in my office surrounded by flower arrangements sent by supporters. "You know what the most amazing part of all this is," she said. "What?" "Your parents thought destroying your reputation would force you to give them what they wanted. Instead, your honesty made you stronger than ever. They accidentally did you the biggest favor of your life." She was right. By trying to manipulate me through shame and social pressure, my parents had forced me to stop hiding from my truth. And my truth, it turned out, was something my community valued and respected. Saturday morning, the day Tyler's fraudulent wedding was supposed to happen, I opened my bakery to find a line of customers waiting with signs that read, "We support Charlotte and Truth wins." For the first time in my life, I felt completely supported and understood by the people around me. It had taken my parents' worst behavior to show me how much goodness existed in the world and how much strength I had developed without even realizing it. The scared 18-year-old who had been thrown out of her family was gone forever. In her place stood a successful business owner surrounded by chosen family who valued her truth more than convenient lies. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that should have made for a perfect wedding day. Instead, I was standing in my bakery at 6 in the morning, watching through the windows as several unfamiliar cars pulled into my parking lot. My parents had made good on their threat. Sarah Walsh arrived first, followed immediately by two unmarked police cars that positioned themselves discreetly but visibly in the surrounding area. Marcus Peterson set up his equipment in the bakery's back office, ready to document everything that was about to unfold. "Remember, Charlotte," Sarah said as we watched more cars arrive, "you have every right to refuse them entry to your property. This is trespassing, and we have law enforcement standing by." At exactly 8:30, my parents emerged from their car, followed by what appeared to be a small army of confused-looking people. I could see Tyler and Emma, but also elderly relatives I barely recognized, well-dressed people who must have been Emma's family and friends, and several individuals carrying what looked like vendor equipment. My mother marched up to the front door of my bakery and tried the handle. Finding it locked, she began knocking loudly. "Charlotte, we know you are in there. Open this door right now." Through the glass, I could see the growing crowd behind her. Tyler looked mortified. Emma appeared to be arguing with someone on her phone, and Judge Bradford had arrived in his own car, his face a mask of controlled fury. I walked to the door and spoke through the glass. "This is private property and you are trespassing. You need to leave immediately." "We are not leaving until you honor your commitment," my father shouted. "These people have traveled from out of state for this wedding." "What commitment? I never made any commitment." That was when I noticed the news van pulling into the parking lot. Jennifer Walsh emerged with her camera crew ready to document whatever was about to happen. My mother pressed her face against the glass door. "Charlotte, you are embarrassing this entire family. Open this door and stop acting like a spoiled child." "Mrs. Henderson," came a voice from behind her. Judge Bradford had approached the door. "I think it is time you and your husband stopped embarrassing yourselves." My mother spun around to face him. "Judge Bradford, thank goodness you are here. Can you please talk some sense into Charlotte?" "The sense I would like to talk is directed at you," he replied coldly. "You have defrauded my family out of $55,000, lied to my daughter about wedding arrangements, and now you have brought 200 people to a venue that never agreed to host your event." The crowd behind them was beginning to understand that something was seriously wrong. I could hear murmurs of confusion and growing anger as people realized they had been used as props in my parents' manipulation scheme. Emma stepped forward and addressed the crowd with a clear, carrying voice. "Everyone, I need your attention, please." The talking stopped immediately. "Tyler and I want to apologize to all of you. We have just learned that our parents misled us about the wedding arrangements. This venue never agreed to host our wedding, and Charlotte Henderson is not responsible for the problems you are experiencing today." An elderly woman who must have been one of Emma's relatives spoke up. "What do you mean the venue never agreed?" "We drove 6 hours from Denver." Tyler stepped up beside Emma. "We drove 6 hours too, Aunt Margaret. Our parents lied to all of us. They told us Charlotte had volunteered her business for the wedding, but that was never true." "Then, where is our wedding supposed to be?" called out a young man I did not recognize. "There is no wedding," Tyler said, his voice breaking. "At least not the way it was planned. Emma and I are going to postpone everything until we can arrange something honest and transparent." The crowd erupted in confused chatter. Some people seemed angry, others appeared sympathetic, and a few were clearly trying to figure out how to get home. My father, apparently realizing that his plan was collapsing, made one last desperate attempt at control. "This is all Charlotte's fault," he yelled loud enough for everyone to hear. "She promised to help her family and then backed out at the last minute because she cares more about money than her own brother." That was when Judge Bradford stepped forward and addressed the crowd himself. "Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am Judge Harold Bradford, Emma's father. I want you to know that the Henderson parents have been investigated by federal authorities for fraud, identity theft, and extortion. They are currently under criminal investigation for defrauding multiple families, including my own." The crowd went completely silent. Charlotte Henderson is not the villain in this situation. She is a victim who had the courage to expose criminal behavior rather than participate in it. I encourage any of you who have suffered financial losses due to today's events to contact the FBI field office in Denver. My mother tried one more time. "He is lying. Charlotte is trying to destroy our family because she is jealous of Tyler's success." "Mrs. Henderson," Judge Bradford said with ice in his voice, "I have personally reviewed bank records showing that you stole your daughter's inheritance to pay for Tyler's education. I have seen loan applications where you forged her signature. I have copies of emails where you plan to take over her business. The only person destroying your family is you." At that moment, 2 FBI agents emerged from the unmarked cars and walked toward my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson," one of them said, "you were supposed to turn yourselves in yesterday. Since you failed to comply, you are under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit racketeering." The agents began reading my parents their rights, while the wedding guests watched in stunned silence. Several people were recording with their phones, and I knew this scene would be all over social media within hours. Tyler walked up to the door where I was still standing inside my bakery. "Charlotte," he called through the glass, "I know I have no right to ask this, but could I please come in and talk to you?" I looked at him for a moment, seeing genuine remorse in his eyes, and made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week earlier. I unlocked the door. "Tyler, Emma Judge, and Mrs. Bradford, you can come in. Everyone else needs to leave the property immediately, or you will be charged with trespassing." As the unwanted crowd dispersed and my parents were led away in handcuffs, I found myself sitting in my bakery with the people who would become my new family. Not the family I was born into, but the family I chose. As the last of the trespassing wedding guests left my parking lot, something beautiful began to happen. Cars started arriving that I had not expected. Neighbors, customers, local business owners, and people I barely knew but who had heard about the confrontation. Mrs. Chen from the flower shop next door arrived with coffee and pastries for everyone who remained. "Charlotte, honey, we saw the news vans and wanted to make sure you were okay." David Rodriguez, who owned the bookstore across the street, brought folding chairs. "Figured you might need somewhere for people to sit after all this craziness." Within an hour, what had started as an attempted ambush had transformed into an impromptu community gathering. People were sharing stories, offering support, and creating exactly the kind of celebration my parents had tried to force through manipulation. Emma sat beside me on one of David's chairs, still looking shell-shocked from watching her future in-laws arrested. "Charlotte, I keep thinking about all the signs I missed. My parents tried to visit your bakery last month to discuss wedding details, but your mother told them you were too busy and preferred to handle everything through family. I thought you were just focused on your business." "They were protecting their lies," I replied. "If you had spoken to me directly, the whole scheme would have fallen apart immediately." Tyler was pacing near the windows, his phone buzzing constantly with calls from relatives and friends who had seen the news coverage. "I do not know how to face people," he said. "Everyone I know thinks I was part of this fraud." Judge Bradford, who had been quietly making phone calls outside, came back into the bakery with news. Tyler, I just spoke with the lead FBI investigator. You are not considered a suspect in your parents' crimes. The evidence shows clearly that you were manipulated just as much as everyone else. What about Emma and me? Can we still get married after all this? Mrs. Bradford, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since arriving, finally spoke up. Just Tyler, Emma, I think you should postpone the wedding until this legal mess is resolved. Not because of shame, but because you deserve to start your marriage with joy and celebration, not scandal and stress. Emma reached for Tyler's hand. Mom's right. I want to marry you, but I want our wedding to be about our love, not about escaping from your parents' crimes. Maya arrived during this conversation, having closed her own business early when she heard about the morning's events. Charlotte, you need to see this, she said, handing me her phone. The screen showed the Sweet Dreams Bakery social media page, which had exploded with supportive messages. Hundreds of people were posting about choosing our bakery, specifically because they admired my courage in standing up to family fraud. Look at the review section, Maya said. 5-star reviews were pouring in from customers expressing support for my honesty and integrity. Several local business owners had posted about partnerships they wanted to explore. 3 different wedding planners had tagged the bakery as their preferred venue for couples who valued authenticity. Maya, this is incredible. It gets better. Channel 7 posted the video of your parents' arrest on their website. It has been shared over 10,000 times in the past 2 hours. People are calling you a hero for standing up to family abuse. I looked around my bakery filled with people who had chosen to support me rather than judge me and felt overwhelmed by the kindness of my community. Mrs. Chen approached me with a proposition. Charlotte, several of us business owners have been talking. We want to organize a fundraiser to help you cover any legal costs from this situation. That is so generous, but I do not think I need help with legal costs. Then we will fundraise for something else, David said. Maybe a scholarship program for young adults who have been financially abused by family members. Judge Bradford looked up from his phone call. Actually, that is an excellent idea. Charlotte, your case has inspired me to research family financial abuse legislation. There are very few legal protections for young adults in your situation. What do you mean? Parents have broad authority to make financial decisions for their minor children, but that authority is supposed to end at 18. However, there are loopholes that allow family members to manipulate young adults through emotional pressure, threat of disinheritance, and social isolation. Your case could help change those laws. Tyler stopped pacing. You mean there are other people going through what Charlotte went through? Thousands, Judge Bradford replied. Family financial abuse is much more common than people realize, especially in cases where one child is favored over others. Emma looked thoughtful. What if Tyler and I used our wedding postponement for something positive? What if we organized a fundraiser for family financial abuse awareness instead of spending money on a big celebration? Tyler's eyes lit up for the first time all day. Emma, that is brilliant. We could turn our wedding disaster into something that actually helps people. I love that idea, I said, feeling tears in my eyes. But are you sure you want your wedding story to be connected to all this drama? Charlotte. Tyler said seriously, I want our wedding story to be about truth, family loyalty, and standing up for what's right. I cannot think of a better way to start our marriage than by honoring the courage you showed in exposing our parents' crimes. Mrs. Bradford smiled. Tyler, that is the first thing you have said today that makes me proud to have you as a future son-in-law. As the afternoon wore on, more people stopped by to offer support. Local news crews interviewed several business owners about community response to family abuse. The mayor's office called to ask if I would consider serving on a task force about protecting young adults from financial exploitation. By evening, what had started as the worst day I could imagine had become one of the most meaningful days of my life. I was not just surviving my parents' attack, I was thriving because of the community that rallied around truth and justice. 2 weeks later, I sat in a federal courthouse watching my parents face the consequences of their choices. The courtroom was packed with their victims, families who had lost money to my father's construction scams, elderly neighbors who had been defrauded, and business owners who had extended credit based on lies. Sarah Walsh sat beside me, a thick folder of evidence on the table between us. Across the aisle, my parents' public defender looked overwhelmed by the scope of the charges against his clients. Judge Morrison, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the plea agreements that had been negotiated over the past 2 weeks. Mr. Henderson, you are pleading guilty to wire fraud, mail fraud identity theft, and conspiracy to commit racketeering. Do you understand that these charges carry a maximum sentence of 25 years in federal prison? My father, looking smaller and older than I had ever seen him, whispered, "Yes, Your Honor." Mrs. Henderson, you are pleading guilty to the same charges. Do you understand the potential penalties? My mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. The prosecutor stood to address the court. Your Honor, the defendants operated a sophisticated fraud scheme that victimized multiple families over a period of 3 years. They stole inheritance money, forged business documents, and attempted to use their daughter's successful business as collateral for fraudulent loans. He gestured toward the gallery filled with victims. The total financial damage exceeds $400,000. But beyond the monetary losses, these defendants destroyed trust within families and traumatized their own children through emotional manipulation. Judge Morrison turned to the victims' impact statements. One by one, people stood to describe how my parents' crimes had affected their lives. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly widow, explained how my father had taken her life savings as a deposit for home repairs that were never completed. I trusted him because he was Charlotte's father, and everyone in town knows what a good person she is. The Williamson family described losing their dream home when my father abandoned construction halfway through, leaving them with a mortgage on an uninhabitable house. 3 different contractors explained how my father had subcontracted work to them and then disappeared without payment, nearly bankrupting their small businesses. When it was my turn to speak, I stood and faced the judge rather than looking at my parents. Your Honor, the financial crimes my parents committed were serious, but the emotional abuse was worse. They spent my entire childhood teaching me that I was worth less than my brother, that my needs did not matter, and that my success belonged to them. I pulled out my prepared statement, my voice steady and clear. When they threw me out at 18 for refusing to give my brother money that legally belonged to me, they thought they were punishing me. Instead, they gave me the greatest gift possible, the chance to build a life based on honesty, hard work, and genuine relationships. I finally looked at my parents. I forgive you, but forgiveness does not mean avoiding consequences. Your crimes hurt many people, and you need to be held accountable. Judge Morrison reviewed the sentencing guidelines and the victims' restitution requests. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, your crimes were systematic, sophisticated, and caused tremendous harm to multiple families. However, your guilty pleas and cooperation with authorities demonstrate some acceptance of responsibility. She paused, studying the documents before her. I sentence you each to 7 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You will pay full restitution to all victims totaling $412,000. All assets will be seized and liquidated to begin restitution payments. My parents would serve actual prison time. They would lose their house, their cars, and everything they had accumulated through fraud. Most importantly, they would never again be able to use family relationships to manipulate and steal. After the sentencing, I stood in the courthouse hallway surrounded by other victims who had become allies in seeking justice. Mrs. Patterson hugged me tightly. Charlotte, honey, thank you for having the courage to start this investigation. Without you, the rest of us would never have gotten justice. The Williamsons thanked me for connecting them with a contractor who had agreed to finish their home at cost using his own materials. Several of the business owners who had been defrauded explained how the criminal convictions would help them recover insurance money they had been denied when the crimes were considered civil matters. Sarah Walsh approached me with paperwork. Charlotte, the restitution order includes full recovery of your stolen inheritance, plus interest and penalties. You should receive approximately $40,000 within 6 months. But more than the money I had recovered, something much more valuable: my sense of self-worth and my understanding of what real family loyalty looked like. Tyler and Emma found me as I was leaving the courthouse. They had attended every day of the proceedings, watching Tyler's idealized image of our parents crumble completely. Charlotte. Tyler said, I know nothing can undo the damage they caused, but I want you to know that Emma and I are committed to building the kind of family with you that we should have had all along. Emma nodded. We have been talking to a family therapist about how to heal from this kind of manipulation. Would you consider joining us for some sessions? I looked at my brother and his fiancée, seeing two people who were genuinely committed to growth and healing, and realized that losing my parents had given me the chance to gain real siblings. I would like that very much. As we walked out of the courthouse together, I felt a chapter of my life closing and a new one beginning. Justice had been served not just in the legal sense, but in the deeper sense of truth being acknowledged and healing being possible. My parents had spent years trying to convince me that I was worth less than Tyler, that my needs did not matter, and that family loyalty meant accepting abuse. The federal justice system, my community, and most importantly, my own courage, had proved them wrong on every count. 3 months after my parents' sentencing, I stood in the garden behind my bakery, watching Tyler and Emma exchange vows in front of 30 people who truly loved and supported them. The autumn leaves created a perfect backdrop for a ceremony that was everything their original wedding was not: honest, heartfelt, and focused on the couple rather than impressing anyone. Judge Bradford officiated the ceremony, his voice warm with genuine affection, as he spoke about marriage as a partnership based on trust and mutual respect. Mrs. Bradford wiped away tears as Emma promised to build a family with Tyler that honored truth over convenience. The guest list included the people who had become my chosen family over the past few months: Maya Sarah Walsh, Marcus Peterson business neighbors who had supported me, and victims of my parents' fraud who had become close friends through our shared journey toward justice. Tyler's vows included a public apology to me that brought everyone to tears. Charlotte, I promise to spend my marriage learning from your example of courage and integrity. You showed all of us what real family loyalty looks like, protecting each other from harm even when that harm comes from within the family itself. Emma's vows acknowledged the unconventional beginning of their love story. Tyler, we learned that a marriage built on other people's lies cannot survive, but a marriage committed to truth and growth can overcome anything. I promise to help you build the kind of family that celebrates each other's successes, rather than exploiting them. After the ceremony, we gathered in the bakery's dining area for a reception that cost less than my parents had stolen in their first month of fraud, but felt infinitely more valuable because every element was authentic. Aunt Linda approached me during dinner, carrying a gift wrapped in simple brown paper. Charlotte, I found something in your grandmother's things that I thought you should have. Inside the package was a small wooden box containing letters my grandmother had written to me but never sent. The letters spanned from my 13th birthday through the month before she died, documenting her growing concern about how my parents treated me. My dear Charlotte, read one letter dated shortly before my 18th birthday. I worry that your parents do not see your strength and kindness the way the rest of us do. Remember that their limitations do not define your worth. You have everything inside you to build a wonderful life. Another letter written during her final illness contained instructions about the inheritance she was leaving me. This money is for your education and your future. Do not let anyone convince you that you owe it to anyone else. Your dreams matter just as much as anyone else's. Reading my grandmother's words, I realized that someone in my family had always seen my worth clearly. Her love had survived even beyond her death, protected in these letters until I was strong enough to receive them. Tyler found me in my office later that evening, reading through the letters while the reception continued downstairs. She knew, did not she, he said, sitting in the chair across from my desk. Grandma knew how they were treating you. She tried to protect me the only way she could, I replied. The inheritance was her way of ensuring I would have choices. Tyler was quiet for a moment. Charlotte, I need to tell you something. Over the past few months, I have been going through my own belongings, trying to figure out what was paid for with your stolen money. He pulled out a check made out to me. My car, my college tuition, the down payment on my condo. It all came from money that belonged to you. I cannot undo that, but I can make sure you get back as much as possible. I looked at the check. It was for $15,000. Not enough to cover everything that had been stolen, but a significant amount for Tyler to give up willingly. Tyler, you do not have to do this. You were a victim of their lies, too. Charlotte, I benefited from those lies for years while you struggled. Taking responsibility is not about punishment. It is about making things right. Emma appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but people are asking for the couple to come back downstairs. As they prepared to leave, Emma handed me an envelope. Charlotte, this is not exactly a wedding gift, but Tyler and I wanted you to have it. Inside was a legal document establishing the Charlotte Henderson Foundation for Family Financial Abuse Awareness, with Tyler and Emma listed as co-founders alongside me. We used the money we would have spent on a honeymoon to set up the foundation, Emma explained. Judge Bradford helped us file the paperwork, and several of the fraud victims have agreed to serve on the board. Tyler added, we want our marriage to be remembered for starting something that helps other families heal from this kind of abuse. I hugged them both, overwhelmed by their generosity and commitment to turning our family's tragedy into something positive. As the last guest left that evening, Maya and I sat in the garden cleaning up decorations and reflecting on how much had changed. You know what amazes me most, Maya said. 6 months ago, you thought confronting your parents would destroy your life. Instead, it gave you the family you always deserved. She was right. I had gained Tyler and Emma as genuine siblings, Judge and Mrs. Bradford as honorary parents, and a community of friends who valued authenticity over convenience. Most importantly, I had gained a clear understanding of my own worth that no one could ever take away again. My parents had spent years trying to convince me that I was difficult, selfish, and ungrateful, but their criminal convictions and the community support I received had proved the opposite. I was courageous, principled, and deeply valued by people who mattered. The scared 18-year-old who had packed 2 suitcases and walked away from her family was completely gone. In her place stood a successful business owner, a community leader, and a woman who understood that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone else's destructive behavior. For the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace with who I was and excited about who I was becoming. 1 year after my parents' arrest, I stood in the expanded dining room of Sweet Dreams Bakery, watching our staff prepare for the busiest Saturday we had ever experienced. What had started as a small neighborhood bakery had become a destination venue, but more importantly, it had become a symbol of resilience and authenticity that attracted customers from across the region. The growth had been organic and sustainable, built on word-of-mouth recommendations from customers who appreciated our commitment to honest business practices and genuine customer service. We had hired 6 additional employees, expanded into the space next door, and added a full-service catering division. Maya, now my official business partner, approached me with the morning's booking sheet. Charlotte, look at this week's schedule. We have 3 corporate events, 2 birthday parties, an anniversary celebration, and 5 couples who specifically requested consultations because they heard about Tyler and Emma's wedding. The wall behind the main counter displayed framed articles about our business, including the feature story that had run in regional business magazine Sweet Dreams Bakery, How Authenticity Became the Recipe for Success. But the article I was most proud of hung in my office, a piece from Family Financial Abuse Awareness Monthly, highlighting the Charlotte Henderson Foundation and its impact on legislation protecting young adults from family financial manipulation. Maya, have you seen the foundation's quarterly report? She pulled out a folder filled with success stories. In 12 months, the foundation had helped 43 families navigate financial abuse situations, provided legal assistance to 18 young adults seeking independence from manipulative families, and contributed to the passage of 3 state laws strengthening penalties for family financial fraud. The foundation's work had attracted national attention, leading to speaking engagements at colleges, conferences, and legislative hearings. I had testified before Congress about family financial abuse, sharing my story with lawmakers who were crafting federal protections for young adults. Judge Bradford, who served as the foundation's legal advisor, arrived that morning with news about the latest development in my parents' case. Charlotte, I wanted to update you on the restitution payments. Your parents' assets have been completely liquidated, and all victims have received full restitution plus penalties. What about my inheritance money? You received $45,000 total. Your original, $25,000 plus 20 years of compound interest. But more importantly, the criminal convictions have been used as precedent in 6 other family fraud cases across the country. Tyler appeared in the doorway carrying flowers for the weekend's events. He and Emma had become regular volunteers, with the foundation sharing their experience as siblings who had healed their relationship after family manipulation. Charlotte, Emma wanted me to ask if you would consider expanding the foundation's work to include support groups for families in recovery from financial abuse. That is a wonderful idea. Have you talked to Dr. Martinez about facilitating? Dr. Martinez was the family therapist who had been working with Tyler, Emma, and me for the past year. Our sessions had been transformative, helping us understand the psychology of family manipulation and develop healthy communication patterns. She is very interested. She says family financial abuse is much more common than most people realize, but there are very few resources for families trying to heal afterward. Emma joined us carrying her laptop with the foundation's latest fundraising numbers. Charlotte, you need to see this. The foundation raised $30,000 last month from small donations. People all over the country are contributing because they identify with your story. The foundation's success had opened doors I never could have imagined. Publishers wanted me to write a book about family financial abuse. Universities invited me to speak to business students about ethical entrepreneurship. Other entrepreneurs sought my advice about building businesses with strong moral foundations. But the opportunity that meant the most came from an unexpected source: a call from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Miss Henderson, we would like to offer you a position as a consultant on family financial fraud cases. Your insights into the psychology of these crimes have been invaluable in several investigations. The FBI consulting work allowed me to help other families while contributing to the prosecution of sophisticated fraud schemes. Each case taught me more about the patterns of family financial abuse and strengthened my commitment to prevention through education. Standing in my thriving bakery, surrounded by employees who shared my values and customers who appreciated authenticity, I realized that my parents' attack on my business had backfired completely. They had intended to destroy my reputation and force me into financial dependence on them. Instead, their criminal behavior had established my reputation as someone who would stand up for truth regardless of personal cost. The business success felt meaningful because it was built on genuine relationships rather than manipulation. Customers chose Sweet Dreams because they trusted our integrity, not because we had manipulated them through emotional pressure or false promises. Maya found me that afternoon reviewing applications for the Foundation Scholarship Program, which provided financial assistance to young adults escaping family financial abuse. Charlotte, do you ever think about what would have happened if you had given in to your parents' demands? All the time. If I had hosted Tyler's fraudulent wedding, I would have become complicit in their crimes. I would have enabled their behavior instead of stopping it. And none of this good work would have happened. She was right. The foundation, the legislative changes, the support for other victims, the business success. All of it had grown from my decision to refuse participation in my parents' manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Charlotte, Emma, and I just heard that our story is being used in a college ethics class as an example of how family relationships can be healed after financial abuse. We are so proud to be part of your mission. As I closed the bakery that evening, I reflected on the journey from victim to advocate to business leader. Every challenge my parents had created had become an opportunity to help others facing similar situations. The 18-year-old girl who had been thrown out for refusing to enable theft had become a successful entrepreneur whose story inspired others to stand up against family abuse. My parents had taught me that I was worth less than my brother, that my needs did not matter, and that family loyalty meant accepting mistreatment. My business success, my community support, and my foundation's impact had proved them wrong on every count. 5 years after that devastating phone call that changed everything, I stood in my beautifully renovated bakery, preparing to close on what had been our most successful year yet. The evening sun streamed through windows that now overlooked a thriving business district where Sweet Dreams had become the anchor that attracted other authentic community-focused enterprises. The Charlotte Henderson Foundation occupied the entire second floor of our building with a staff of 12 people dedicated to preventing family financial abuse and supporting survivors. Our work had contributed to federal legislation protecting young adults from family financial manipulation, and our support network had helped over 200 families across the country. Tyler and Emma arrived for our weekly family dinner, a tradition we had established to maintain the healthy relationships we had built from the ruins of our parents' manipulation. They brought their 6-month-old daughter, Sarah, named after Sarah Walsh, the attorney who had helped us seek justice. As I held my niece, I marveled at how different her childhood would be from ours. She would grow up in a family that celebrated individual achievements rather than exploiting them, that resolved conflicts through honest communication rather than emotional manipulation, and that understood love as support rather than control. Charlotte, Emma said as we prepared dinner together, I got a call today from a reporter who wants to do a 5-year follow-up story about our family's journey. Are you interested? What angle are they taking? How financial abuse survivors can not only heal but thrive, and how confronting family dysfunction can actually strengthen the relationships worth saving. Tyler, who was building a successful career as a financial advisor, specializing in helping young adults establish independence, looked up from playing with his daughter. I think we should do it. People need to know that standing up to family abuse is not about being vindictive. It is about creating space for genuine healing. He was right. Our story had become proof that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to participate, in their dysfunction. Dr. Martinez, our family therapist, had explained this concept during one of our last sessions. Enabling destructive behavior feels like loyalty, but it actually prevents the people you love from facing the consequences that might motivate them to change. My parents, now in their 4th year of federal prison, had begun writing letters requesting reconciliation. Their correspondence showed genuine remorse for their crimes and some understanding of the pain they had caused, but also revealed ongoing attempts to minimize their responsibility and manipulate my emotions. Sarah Walsh had advised me to respond carefully. Forgiveness is for your healing, Charlotte, not their comfort. You can forgive them without resuming a relationship that would put you at risk. I had chosen to write back once explaining that I forgave them, but that rebuilding trust would require consistent demonstration of changed behavior over time, not just words of regret. Their response had revealed that they still expected immediate restoration of family relationships based on their apologies, proving they had not yet grasped the depth of damage their manipulation had caused. Judge Bradford, who had become a mentor and honorary father figure, joined us for dinner with news about the latest legislative victory. Charlotte, the Family Financial Protection Act passed the House today. It includes provisions specifically inspired by your case. Criminal penalties for family members who forge financial documents, protection for young adults' inheritance rights, and mandatory reporting requirements for financial institutions that detect suspicious family-related transactions. The legislation represented a victory not just for my family, but for thousands of young adults who would now have legal protections against the kind of abuse I had experienced. As we sat around the dinner table sharing stories about our week, I reflected on the life lessons that had emerged from our family's journey through crisis and healing. The most important lesson was that authentic relationships require boundaries. For years, I had believed that family loyalty meant accepting whatever treatment my parents chose to give me. But healthy relationships actually require mutual respect, and sometimes establishing that respect means being willing to walk away from people who refuse to treat you properly. I had also learned that other people's dysfunction does not define your worth. My parents' inability to love me appropriately was not evidence of my lovability. It was evidence of their limitations. Understanding this distinction had freed me to build relationships with people who could appreciate and support who I really was. Perhaps most importantly, I had discovered that surviving abuse can become the foundation for helping others heal. My parents' treatment had given me insights into family manipulation that I never would have gained otherwise, and those insights had become tools for helping other families break cycles of financial and emotional abuse. The Foundation's work had shown me that my experience, however painful, had prepared me to recognize and respond to family abuse in ways that could prevent other young adults from suffering as I had. Maya joined us for dinner, bringing her own good news about a partnership we had developed with 3 universities to create family financial abuse awareness programs. Charlotte, the program at State University, is already showing results. They have identified 12 students who were being financially manipulated by family members, and all 12 have received legal and counseling support through our partnership. As the evening wound down and everyone prepared to leave, Tyler approached me with a gift, a photo album documenting our journey from estrangement through healing to genuine family relationships. Charlotte, I want Sarah to grow up knowing the real story of our family, not the fairy tale version where everyone was perfect, but the true story of how we learned to love each other honestly. Looking through the photos, from my parents' arrest through Tyler and Emma's authentic wedding to the Foundation's first fundraiser to baby Sarah's christening, I saw a visual representation of how confronting dysfunction had created space for genuine love to flourish. As I locked up the bakery that night, I thought about the phone call that had started this journey. My mother's demand that I host Tyler's fraudulent wedding had felt like the worst thing that could happen to me. Instead, it had been the catalyst for the best life I could have imagined. Standing in my successful business surrounded by chosen family who valued truth over convenience, leading a foundation that protected other families from the abuse I had survived, I understood that my parents' cruelest treatment had accidentally given me the greatest gifts of my life. They had forced me to develop independence, resilience, and the courage to stand up for what was right. They had taught me to value authentic relationships over convenient ones. Most importantly, they had shown me that survival could become service, and that the most meaningful response to personal pain was preventing others from experiencing the same suffering. My life lesson was clear. Sometimes the people who hurt you most teach you the most valuable lessons, not through their love, but through your refusal to accept their abuse as normal. Real family supports your growth rather than exploiting your success, celebrates your achievements rather than claiming credit for them, and protects your well-being rather than sacrificing it for their convenience. The scared 18-year-old who had been thrown out of her family home had become a confident woman surrounded by chosen family who understood that love is demonstrated through respect, support, and genuine care for each other's well-being. To everyone listening who might be facing family financial abuse, emotional manipulation, or pressure to enable destructive behavior, you deserve relationships that celebrate your worth rather than diminish it. Standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved is refuse to participate in dysfunction, even when that refusal comes at significant personal cost. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it encourages you to value your own worth, seek genuine relationships, and remember that surviving difficult family situations can become the foundation for helping others heal. If my story resonates with you, I would love to hear about your own experiences with family dynamics in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal well-being? How did you navigate that difficult decision? Please like this video if it provided value, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges, and share this with anyone who might benefit from knowing they are not alone in dealing with difficult family relationships. Remember that your story matters, your boundaries are valid, and your healing can become a source of hope for others facing similar struggles. Thank you for being part of this community that values truth, healing, and genuine connection.